Wow, walking around Mexico City, you see so many companies from China that just don't exist in the US, like Huawei, Xiaomi, BYD, and also Didi Chuxing.
Free order of tacos to those diners who come with their Huawei phones.
Why is China so interested in Mexico? What does it want?
More than 30 infrastructure projects in the last years by China in Mexico.
And how does all of this impact the United States?
80% of cellular infrastructure in Mexico depends on Huawei, which is prohibited in the US.
But why are Chinese companies pouring billions of dollars into Mexico right now?
Mexico is surpassing China as the biggest trade partner for the US. But behind the curtain is China. And China's presence in Mexico is actually bigger than it's ever been.
Mexico is the main trading partner of the US.
That's Professor Enrique Dussel-Peters. He's a prominent Mexican economist and part of the Center for Chinese-Mexican Studies. He's also the author of Connecting China, Latin America, and the Caribbean.
If you integrate in your cars or auto parts or electronics or yarns or shoes, any kind of value-added parts and components from China, you will face the consequences.
And while the US and many Americans are seeing China more and more as a threat, the opposite is happening here in Mexico. Just look at what happened during the pandemic.
Mexican president requested in 2020 help, we don't have anything. And the US said, tomorrow we have our own problems. The European Union said, not today. The only country that sent hundreds of airplanes with vaccines, with masks, with ventilators was China. You have videos and you have pictures of hundreds of airplanes landing and cooperating.
China sent 20 million doses of vaccines to Mexico and more than 20 million surgical masks. China wants to help Mexico.
China has eradicated its absolute poverty, according to the World Bank, by 800 million inhabitants. This eradication or fall of absolute poverty has not happened in Latin America and the Caribbean. So China is humbly saying, my friends, do you want help? Do you want to improve the quality of life of your population?
But is there a catch to all of this?
Yes, of course, there is no free lunch. But today they have not said that. And for that we want half of Mexico. No, they wouldn't dare to go into the backyard of the US. No, the irony again. The discussion is very different than if you live in Vietnam.
China's presence in Latin America has been growing steadily over the past few decades, but in recent years, Mexico has been the focal point.
China's presence in Latin America and Mexico has grown enormously in terms of trade, investment, infrastructure.
By the way, if you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button because I'm making more videos like this and it's free.
In 2022 alone, Chinese investments in Mexico reached over $2 billion. This might kind of seem like a drop in the bucket compared to the trillions flowing globally, but for Mexico, that's a big deal.
China has become the major trading partner of many countries in Latin America: Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Peru, second of Mexico.
But some critics are worried about Mexico just becoming too dependent on China here.
So what is China after? One of the big reasons China is investing so much in Mexico is its strategic location. See, Mexico is right next door to the United States, which remains the largest consumer market in the world. So by establishing a strong presence in Mexico, Chinese companies can benefit from Mexico's favorable trade agreements, especially the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which replaced NAFTA. This allows Chinese goods manufactured in Mexico to be exported to the US with minimal tariffs. But all of this is not just about tariffs.
As a result of the confrontation between the US and China, apparently third countries, such as Mexico, but also Vietnam and Brazil and others, might be favored to receive massive investments, both from the US and China.
See, Mexico is becoming more and more attractive as a manufacturing hub. Labor costs in China are rising, and Mexico offers a cheaper alternative. This shift is sometimes referred to as nearshoring, where companies move production closer to their primary markets.
It's a smart move, right? See, Mexico is next to the US market, so it's close proximity, and China comes and brings all of its experience in manufacturing.
By setting up shop in Mexico, China can maintain its dominance in global manufacturing while reducing costs and delivery times to the US market. See, the price of shipping from China to the US has surged the past few years. The pandemic caused a dramatic spike in shipping rates because of disruptions in supply chains, increased demand for goods, and just overall port congestion. And China shut down so many factories in an effort to help prevent the virus's spread. Fast forward to today, while the shipping rates have declined from their peak, they remain significantly higher than their pre-pandemic levels.
Despite literally sharing a big border with the US, you will see so many companies here that are not allowed in the US or they just don't exist in the US. I'm talking about smartphone makers like Huawei, Xiaomi, EVs like BYD, and Didi.
Didi launched here in Mexico in 2018 and is determined to beat out Uber.
So I'm sitting in my first ever ride with an app called Didi Choosing. Now, it's pretty much the same as Uber, but it's China's version of it, and it is all over Mexico.
Uber nunca lo he manejado. No tengo la plataforma yo de Uber. Solo Didi.
It's not just ride-hailing, but it's food delivery service too. 74% of Mexican consumers have used Didi Food in the past year. Compare that to 66% who have used Uber Eats.
I'm standing outside of the Didi office in Mexico City. They're training hundreds and hundreds of drivers and food delivery workers.
China is growing a lot. A lot of technology companies are growing here. We have been almost 7 years here in Mexico. It's the first country outside China.
In 2023, Chinese automaker BYD announced plans to build a massive factory in Mexico, aiming to produce electric vehicles for the North American market. This move not only underscores China's commitment to establishing a foothold in the region, but also highlights the shifting dynamics of global manufacturing. But China is not just interested in nearshoring for the US market, it also wants power.
If we would not like to use Chinese technology, we would not have cellular phones. No, we would have to use fire or I don't know what to connect to each other.
China is also pouring money into infrastructure and energy projects in Mexico, and this isn't just about building roads or bridges, though there's plenty of that too. China is especially interested in Mexico's energy sector.
More than 30 infrastructure projects in the last years by China in Mexico, but also in Argentina, Brazil, Central America. It simply says made in China. There has been the renovation of the Line 1 of the subway in Mexico City, which is being used by hundreds of millions of persons every year.
China's State Power Investment Cooperation is investing in renewable energy projects across from Mexico, from solar farms in Baja California to wind farms in Oaxaca. And these projects not only help China gain influence over a critical sector, but also align with its broader global strategy of promoting green energy. And then it can leverage this power in international negotiations. So what's China's endgame here? It's about more than just economics. It's about strategic positioning. See, by strengthening its ties with Mexico, China is essentially placing itself in the US's backyard. This move could be seen as part of a broader strategy to counterbalance US influence, not just in Latin America, but globally.
Which goes far beyond investments and trade and chips and semiconductors and high tech.
China is also securing access to crucial resources. Mexico is rich in natural resources like oil, silver, and lithium. These are key materials for technology and energy industries. And by investing in these sectors, China is not only ensuring a steady supply chain for its tech and manufacturing giants, but also gaining leverage in future trade negotiations. So what does all this mean for the US? Well, historically, the US has been Mexico's main trading partner and a dominant force in the region, but that dynamic is shifting. See, as China deepens its economic ties with Mexico, the US is finding itself in a more difficult position. Washington has even expressed concerns over China's growing influence in Latin America, and there's now more pressure on the US to counteract this influence.
Since 2022, 2023, the US is increasingly highlighting that its international relations with all countries, particularly with China, will be subordinated to the national security of the United States.
But it's not as simple as just telling Mexico to cut ties with China. See, Mexico values values its relationship with the US, but it also sees the benefits of diversifying its economic partnerships, especially in a global economy where China is a rising power. And the US itself relies on Mexican manufacturing, especially for sectors like automotive and electronics. So disrupting Mexico's relationship with China could have unintended consequences for American industries too. This creates a complex situation where the US needs to balance its geopolitical concerns with its economic interests. So what's next? Well, the competition between the US and China for influence in Mexico is likely to just only intensify. For Mexico, this could mean more opportunities, but also more challenges too. The country will need to navigate this complex landscape carefully, balancing the benefits of Chinese investment with the risks of becoming too reliant on one major power. For China, Mexico represents a critical piece of its global strategy, a gateway to the US market, and a potential ally in a region historically dominated by American influence. And for the US, well, it's a wake-up call. The days of unquestioned dominance in its own hemisphere are over, and how it responds to this new reality will shape the future of the region and perhaps the world.
If you could imagine today a video one day without China in Latin America and in Mexico, most of infrastructure, cars, auto parts, electricity would not work.
The story of China's increasing influence in Mexico is more than just a tale of economic investment. It's a story about the shifting balance of power in the 21st century. As the US and China continue to compete on the global stage, Mexico is finding itself in a unique position, one that could redefine its role in the world.
So if we want to discuss, if suddenly someone in the US and from Washington says, we don't want to have any 5G from China in Mexico, today we are not institutionally prepared to respond to that, because what does this mean if we get rid of 5G? What are the options?
Let me know in the comments, what do you think this is going to mean for US-China tension? And what is it going to mean for Mexico and its economy in general? While you're at it, check out more of my videos and don't forget to subscribe and follow @Uptin.